You were a $20 mistake. My boys bet I couldn't string along an African girl for 2 years. I won." His groomsmen erupted in laughter, recording as comprehension replaced hope in her eyes, as 5 years of trying to belong in Korea crystallized into entertainment worth less than lunch. The wedding guests' phones captured everything. The ivory dress Goodness had saved 2 years to afford, the cherry blossoms drifting like ash through the Seoul garden, and Lee Sung's voice slicing through her dreams. Her best friend Kimra stood beside him, smirking, adding her own footage to the collection. Within 2 hours, the video would trend nationally. Within 2 days, Goodness would stand on a bridge, choosing death over humiliation. But in a Gangnam penthouse, a man who brokered deals between politicians and criminals was watching that video for the 3rd time, making a single phone call that would transform her execution into his declaration of war. Lee Sung had just humiliated the only woman Seoul's most dangerous man had ever loved. Subscribe to the channel right now, so you never miss a single second of this cinematic journey. The story is moving fast, and you'll want to be here when the final reckoning hits. Goodness pressed powder onto her cheeks with trembling fingers, studying her reflection in the hotel mirror. The makeup artist had left an hour ago, pronouncing her perfect, but perfection felt fragile this morning. 5 years. 5 years since she'd arrived in Seoul with 2 suitcases and a scholarship to study international business at Fiancé University. 5 years of navigating a city that looked at her dark skin and natural hair with curiosity that sometimes felt kind and sometimes felt like examination. She met Lee Sung during her 2nd semester at a language exchange meetup in Hongdae. While other Korean participants cycled through foreign students like trading cards, practicing English for 15 minutes before moving on, Lee Sung stayed. He listened when she explained the tonal differences between Yoruba and Korean, laughed genuinely at her mispronunciations, and asked questions about Lagos that weren't about poverty or safaris. "You're not what I expected," he'd said on their 3rd coffee meeting, and Goodness had chosen to hear it as a compliment. Language exchange meetups are common in Seoul's university districts, where Koreans practice English and foreigners practice Korean. However, these spaces can reflect broader social dynamics. Foreign women, particularly from Africa and Southeast Asia, often report being fetishized or treated as practice rather than potential equals. The term riding is sometimes used in expat communities to describe Koreans who seek foreigners for language practice, status, or novelty without genuine relationship intentions. Their courtship unfolded across 2 years of carefully managed expectations. Lee Sung introduced her to his friends, but never his family. "They're traditional," he explained. "They need time." Goodness told herself that love required patience. She worked 3 part-time jobs, tutoring English, translating documents, and weekend restaurant shifts to save money while finishing her degree. Lee Sung worked at a startup, always talking about the next funding round, the next opportunity. When he proposed at a Han River picnic, Goodness cried with relief more than joy. Finally, she would belong somewhere. Finally, someone had chosen her permanently. The wedding dress had cost 2 months of savings. Goodness ran her hands down the ivory silk, remembering the boutique owner's surprised expression when she'd walked in. "Are you sure you want white?" the woman had asked in Korean, as if Goodness might not understand the implications. But Goodness wanted traditional. She wanted to prove she could do everything right, be everything expected, earn her place in this country that still felt like it was deciding whether to accept her. Her phone buzzed. Kimra, her best friend and bridesmaid. "Almost time. You look beautiful, sis." Kimra was Korean-American, fluent in both cultures, and had helped Goodness navigate countless social confusions over the years. "Don't worry about his family not coming," Kimra had said during rehearsal. "Some battles you win after the wedding, not before." Goodness applied lipstick, choosing hope over the anxiety tightening her chest. Today, everything would change. Today, she would finally stop being the foreign girl working to belong. She would be Lee Sung's wife. She had no idea that in 40 minutes, she would wish she'd never been born. The garden venue was everything goodness had imagined. White chairs arranged in neat rows, cherry blossoms drifting across manicured grass, Seoul's skyline providing an urban fairy tale backdrop. 50 guests, mostly Lee Sung's friends and co-workers, since Goodness's family couldn't afford the flight from Nigeria, held their phones up as she walked down the makeshift aisle. She'd grown accustomed to being photographed in Korea. Her appearance always seemed to warrant documentation. Lee Sung stood at the altar in a designer suit, his expression unreadable. His groomsmen flanked him, all holding phones at odd angles. Goodness's stomach tightened, but she pushed the feeling away. This was normal now. Everything documented, every moment shared. She'd learned that Koreans approached life through their screens, capturing experiences to prove they'd happened. South Korea has one of the world's highest smartphone penetration rates and most active social media cultures. The concept of 인지영시at, proof shot, is culturally significant, photographing experiences to validate their occurrence. However, this culture of constant documentation can be weaponized, as viral shaming has become a significant social control mechanism. The officiant began the ceremony, but something was wrong. Lee Sung wasn't looking at her. He was glancing at his groomsmen, who were grinning like they were watching a comedy show. Kimra stood to Goodness's left, holding her bouquet, her expression oddly blank. Before we continue, Lee Sung said suddenly, interrupting the officiant, "I need to be honest." His voice carried across the garden, and guests leaned forward. Goodness felt her smile freeze. "Goodness, you've been wonderful these past 2 years. Really committed to this relationship." Relief flooded her. This was some Korean wedding tradition she didn't know about, a public declaration before the vows. But Lee Sung's smile wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone about to deliver a punchline. "The thing is," he continued, his voice rising so everyone could hear, "this whole thing was a bet. My friends and we had this competition in university. $20. Who could string along a foreign girl the longest?" He gestured to his groomsmen, who were openly laughing now, phones still recording. "I won. 2 years. You were so easy, always so grateful for basic attention. You were a $20 mistake that I just kept going." The garden went silent except for suppressed laughter from the groomsmen's section. Goodness's brain couldn't process the words. They felt like they were in a language she didn't speak, even though they were in perfect English meant to ensure she understood completely. "The guys said I should tell you last week, but I wanted to see if you'd actually show up in the dress," Lee Sung continued, performing now for his friends. "You did. You really thought someone like me would marry someone like you. Did you think working hard and being nice would make you Korean? Would make you belong here?" Kimra stepped forward, and for a moment Goodness thought her friend would intervene. Instead, Kimra was recording too, her phone's red light blinking. "Girl, you should see your face right now," Kimra said, her Korean-American accent suddenly more Korean than American. "Lee Sung told me about the bet months ago. I helped him keep you convinced." The phones captured everything. Goodness's face crumbling, the ivory dress that suddenly felt like a costume, the moment she understood that every kindness had been theater. Within 30 minutes, the video would be uploaded. Within 2 hours, it would be viral. By evening, Goodness would be Seoul's entertainment, the delusional foreign girl who thought she could belong. Ming Jun's office occupied the 47th floor of the Gangnam Finance Tower, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Seoul that looked like a circuit board of lights and ambition. At 11 p.m. on a Saturday, the building was empty except for him. He preferred it this way. Silence allowed for clearer thinking, and the decisions he made required absolute clarity. His assistant's email had arrived an hour ago with a subject line that made him pause, regarding Ms. Goodness Okafor. Jung-min knew better than to contact him on weekends unless something required immediate attention. Ming-jun opened the attachment and found himself watching a wedding video that had already accumulated 500,000 views across Korean social media platforms. He watched it once with professional detachment, cataloging facts. He watched it twice with something that felt uncomfortably like rage building in his chest. By the third viewing, he had memorized every face of the men recording, the specific laugh of the woman Goodness had called her best friend, and the exact moment Goodness's expression transformed from confusion to comprehension to something that looked like death. For 3 years, Ming-jun had maintained what he considered appropriate professional distance from Goodness. She'd been hired as a junior analyst in his legitimate import-export business, one of 200 employees he theoretically oversaw. But he'd noticed her immediately, not because of her appearance, though Seoul's homogeneity made her dark skin and natural hair visually striking, but because of something else entirely. She was genuinely kind in a city that treated kindness as either weakness or performance. He'd observed her bringing coffee to security guards that other employees walked past without seeing. Watched her stay late to help an overwhelmed intern translate documents, unpaid and uncomplaining. Once, he'd seen her crying in the bathroom after a client meeting, and when he'd reviewed the security footage and audio, he'd heard the client call her a diversity hire who should go back to where she came from. Ming-jun had personally ensured that clients' company lost their export licenses within a month, though he'd been careful that Goodness never knew why the racist man suddenly stopped coming to their offices. Korean business culture operates on intricate hierarchies where age, gender, education pedigree, and family background determine professional trajectories more than merit. Foreign workers, particularly from non-Western countries, face additional barriers. They're often hired for global image rather than advancement potential, creating a glass ceiling reinforced by both policy and prejudice. Ming-jun had built his legitimate empire understanding these systems, and his illegitimate one by exploiting them. He'd told himself that watching Goodness was protective rather than obsessive, that a man with his particular moral complications had no right to approach someone who smiled at strangers because she believed the world could be good. Ming-jun's hands had authorized shipments that existed in legal gray zones, brokered deals between politicians and criminals, ensured loyalty through methods that would never appear in corporate reports. He'd built his power by understanding that Seoul's glittering surface concealed machinery that ran on fear, money, and carefully managed violence. The video played again. Lee Sung's voice. "You were a $20 mistake." Ming-jun made a single phone call to his head of security. "I need everything on Lee Sung, every person in that wedding party, and the woman named Kimra. Financial records, employment history, family connections, debts, secrets, everything. And find Goodness." Now, 48 hours after the wedding, Goodness stood on the Mapo Bridge at 3 a.m., her phone clutched in one hand. The Han River stretched below like black glass, reflecting the city's indifferent lights. She drafted 7 different messages to her mother in Lagos, each one trying to explain the unexplainable before deleting them all. How could she tell her mother that the daughter she'd sacrificed everything to educate had been a joke? That 5 years of hard work, cultural adaptation, and determined optimism had been entertainment for bored Korean men worth exactly $20. The video had spread faster than she could have imagined. Korean social media moved with frightening velocity. What Americans called going viral happened in Seoul with infrastructure specifically designed for rapid sharing. KakaoTalk group chats, Naver cafe communities, Instagram, and platforms Goodness didn't even use had all disseminated her humiliation. The comments section had become a referendum on her existence. Foreign girls always think they're special, one comment read in Korean. She should be grateful anyone paid attention to her, said another. At least he was honest before the marriage. He could have kept using her. English comments from other expats weren't much kinder. Girl, you should have known better. Korean men don't marry foreign women, especially not black ones. This is what happens when you're desperate to belong somewhere you're not wanted. By Sunday evening, she'd been fired from her weekend tutoring job. Parents didn't want their children learning English from that woman in the video. Her landlord had called Monday morning with apologetic firmness. Other tenants had complained, and her lease wouldn't be renewed next month. It's bad for the building's reputation. A lifetime of being told she was too loud, too different, too much had culminated in this. She was too humiliated to deserve housing. Depression operates through a process called cognitive distortion, where the brain transforms thoughts into absolutes. This bad thing happened becomes everything is bad and will always be bad. Trauma accelerates this process, especially when it involves public shaming. The brain's threat detection system, designed to protect against physical danger, cannot distinguish between social death and actual death. To Goodness's nervous system, standing on this bridge felt like the only logical conclusion to eliminate a threat that had become her entire existence. She climbed onto the railing, her phone still in her hand. She should throw it in the river first, let it drown before she did. But before she could move, a black Mercedes stopped impossibly in the middle of the bridge, hazard lights flashing. Traffic didn't stop on Mapo Bridge at 3 a.m. unless something was very wrong or someone was very powerful. The driver's door opened, and Ming Jun stepped out. He wore dark slacks and a black shirt, moving with the controlled precision of someone who understood violence intimately. Goodness recognized him immediately. Her boss, the man she'd brought coffee to dozens of times, who'd never smiled but had never been cruel either. Step back from the edge. Goodness, he said quietly, approaching with hands visible. How did you? She started. I've been looking for you for 2 days. Ming Jun interrupted. Then he did something that made no sense. He climbed onto the railing beside her, close enough that if she fell, he would too. Goodness stared at Ming Jun balanced beside her on the bridge railing, his expensive shoes finding purchase on metal designed to prevent exactly what they were doing. The wind off the Han River pulled at his shirt, but he stood perfectly still, like someone accustomed to high-risk positions. What are you doing? She whispered, and her voice sounded strange, the first words she'd spoken aloud in 2 days. If the world feels unbearable enough that you're standing here, then I failed you, Ming Jun said, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her chest tighten. As your employer, as someone who should have protected you from the beginning. But before you decide this is the ending, let me show you what I've prepared for the people who hurt you. Then you can choose. The audacity of his statement, treating her potential suicide as a decision to postpone rather than prevent, shocked her system enough to make her hesitate. Suicide prevention training teaches that sometimes breaking the narrative pattern matters more than saying the right thing, that unexpected responses can interrupt the brain's convinced trajectory toward death. Ming Jun seemed to understand this instinctively, offering her not comfort, but curiosity, no tresque but delayed choice. I don't understand, Goodness said. You're my boss. You barely know me. I know you bring coffee to security guards that other employees don't see as human, Ming Jun replied, still balanced on the railing, still close enough to fall with her. I know you stayed until midnight helping an intern translate contracts because she was crying in the break room. I know a client called you a diversity hire who should go back where you came from, and you went to the bathroom to cry instead of reporting him because you didn't want to seem difficult. His voice dropped lower. I know that client's company mysteriously lost their export licenses 3 weeks later, And I know you never wondered why. Goodness's brain struggled to process this. Ming Jun had noticed her, had protected her, the man who moved through their office like winter wind, who she'd never seen smile, who everyone spoke about in hushed tones, suggesting power that extended beyond quarterly reports. Why would you do that? She asked. Because watching you exist in this city convinced me that goodness isn't weakness, Ming Jun said. And the way he said goodness made it sound like both her name and a concept he'd lost faith in until she'd appeared. And because men like Lee Sung treat people like you as entertainment, because they've never encountered real consequences. I'm very good at consequences, goodness. Let me show you. Then, if you still want to jump, I won't stop you. But I think you might want to see them suffer first. The honesty was brutal, and somehow exactly what penetrated the fog in her brain. Not "you have so much to live for," or "suicide is permanent," statements that felt abstractly true but emotionally irrelevant. Instead, he offered her something concrete. Revenge, witnessed destruction, the satisfaction of watching her humiliation answered with systematic ruin. It wasn't healthy or therapeutic, but it was real, and reality was the only thing that could compete with the absolute narrative of death. She took his outstretched hand. Smash that subscribe button, and let us know in the comments who you have enjoyed so far. Your support keeps these epic tales coming, so subscribe. Ming Jun's penthouse existed in a different Seoul than the one Goodness knew, 43 floors above Hanamdong, where old money and new power maintained estates that cost more than most people earned in lifetimes. The interior looked like nobody actually lived there. Minimalist furniture in blacks and grays, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city like a museum exhibit. Surfaces so clean they seemed sterile. Korean interior design trends often favored minimalism influenced by traditional aesthetics. But this felt less like design choice and more like someone who didn't believe in home. A private doctor arrived within 15 minutes of their arrival. An older woman who asked no questions about why her patient was soaking wet and catatonic. She examined Goodness with efficient gentleness, started an 4 for dehydration, and administered a mild sedative. She needs sleep more than anything, the doctor told Ming Jun in Korean, assuming Goodness couldn't understand. And probably psychiatric evaluation, but that's not my department. She handed him prescription bottles. Anti-anxiety medication. Make sure she eats before taking them. And keep sharp objects locked away for at least a week. After the doctor left, Ming Jun prepared tea with the mechanical precision of someone following instructions rather than instinct. He knew exactly how Goodness took it. Honey, no milk, which should have been impossible because they'd never had tea together. When she stared at the cup without drinking, he said quietly, "I've watched you for 3 years. I know your preferences because I couldn't stop paying attention." "That's creepy," Goodness whispered, but without conviction. Her brain felt wrapped in cotton, the sedative softening the sharp edges of panic that had been her constant companion since the wedding. "Yes," Ming Jun agreed, not defending himself. "But I'm not going to pretend this is normal concern from an employer. You've been mine to protect for 3 years. I just failed to act on it until you were standing on a bridge." He sat across from her, maintaining careful distance. "You're staying here until you're stable. I've arranged indefinite medical leave from work. You're safe now." The word safe felt foreign. Goodness had spent 5 years in Seoul, never feeling entirely safe. Always aware of her visibility, her difference, the way strangers' eyes tracked her on subways and streets. Korean society's ethnic homogeneity meant that looking different attracted constant attention. Usually curiosity, but sometimes hostility, creating a persistent, low-level stress that foreign residents of color learned to navigate as the price of living there. She told herself that marrying Lee Sung would provide safety through belonging, that his Korean family would become her shield against being perpetually foreign. Instead, He'd proven that even intimate proximity didn't guarantee seeing her as human. "Why are you doing this?" Goodness asked, the question she'd asked on the bridge, still unanswered in any way that made sense. Ming-jun was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Because everyone who knows my name fears it. I've built power through intimidation, strategy, and operating in spaces between legal and illegal. I'm not a good man, Goodness. But you looked at me like I was just another person who might need kindness. You smiled at me without wanting anything. I've been yours since that moment, even though I had no right to be." The sedative pulled Goodness toward sleep, but she heard herself whisper, "What are you going to do to them?" Ming-jun's smile was cold and precise. "Everything." Goodness woke 16 hours later in a bedroom that looked like a luxury hotel. White linens, blackout curtains, and silence, so complete it felt like the city outside had disappeared. Her phone sat on the nightstand, powered off, and for a moment she couldn't remember why that felt significant. Then memory crashed back. The bridge, Ming-jun's hand, the impossible reality that her boss had brought her to his home instead of a hospital. The sedative had given her the first dreamless sleep she'd experienced in 3 days, but waking meant confronting everything she'd tried to escape. She found Ming-jun in his office, multiple screens displaying what looked like financial reports and news feeds. He glanced up when she entered, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "There's food in the kitchen. The doctor said you need to eat before medication." His tone was clinical, but something in the way he'd arranged breakfast, Korean rice porridge alongside Nigerian chin-chin, that he must have sourced from an African market, suggested attention that went beyond medical necessity. In collectivist cultures like Korea's, care is often expressed through actions rather than words, through anticipating needs before they're spoken. And Ming-jun had somehow learned her needs through 3 years of observation she hadn't known was happening. "I want to know what you did," Goodness said, ignoring the food. "You said you'd show me consequences." Ming-jun studied her for a moment, then gestured to the chair across from his desk. Lee Sung's startup received seed funding 6 months ago, $2 million from 3 venture capital firms. As of yesterday morning, all 3 investors pulled out, citing ethical concerns about leadership character. His company will collapse by end of week without that capital. He pulled up a news article on one screen. His lease application for a Gangnam apartment was rejected. His credit cards were declined at 3 establishments yesterday. Banks are suddenly finding irregularities in his accounts that require freezing assets pending investigation. "How did you—" Goodness started, but Ming-jun continued. "Kimra worked in marketing for a cosmetics company. Past tense. Her employer discovered evidence, legitimate evidence that I ensured they'd discover, that she'd been accepting bribes from vendors to favor certain suppliers. She was terminated Monday and is currently being investigated for embezzlement. Her work visa status is now under review." He switched screens. "Each of the groomsmen who recorded your humiliation has experienced similar professional complications. Job applications mysteriously rejected. Social media accounts banned for terms of service violations that trigger algorithmic blacklisting across platforms. One of them was accepted to graduate school abroad until the admissions office received anonymous but verified information about his involvement in coordinated harassment." Goodness felt something cold move through her chest. Korea's interconnected systems, where everything from apartment rentals to job applications required linking bank accounts, social security numbers, and digital identities, meant that once someone was flagged in one database, the contamination spread like virus through every platform. Ming-jun hadn't just attacked their finances. He'd poisoned their digital existence in a country where digital presence determined access to nearly everything essential for modern life. "This is too fast," Goodness said. "This kind of coordination takes weeks, months. You did all of this in 2 days." I've spent 3 years learning everything about potential threats to your peace, Ming Jun replied, his voice matter-of-fact. I was always prepared for something like this. I just hoped I'd never need to use it. He leaned back in his chair, watching her reaction carefully. I can stop if this disturbs you. Or I can continue until they understand what it feels like when someone with actual power decides you don't deserve peace. Your choice. The scary thing was how much satisfaction Goodness felt hearing about their destruction. She'd been raised to believe in forgiveness, in turning the other cheek, in being the bigger person. But those lessons assumed the other party would eventually recognize your humanity. Lee Sung and his friends had treated her humiliation as entertainment worth $20 and viral fame. They'd faced no consequences because Korean society's treatment of foreigners, especially black foreigners, meant her pain didn't register as seriously as it would have for someone who looked like them. Women in Korea who experienced sexual harassment or discrimination often found that reporting incidents resulted in more social punishment for the reporter than the perpetrator, because maintaining group harmony mattered more than individual justice. Goodness had internalized this so deeply that she'd gone to a bridge instead of the police, assuming no one would care that she'd been destroyed as a joke. But Ming Jun cared. Ming Jun cared with systematic, terrifying efficiency. Don't stop, Goodness said quietly. I want them to suffer. Ming Jun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes that might have been approval. Then they will. Over the following week, Goodness existed in a strange liminal space, physically safe in Ming Jun's penthouse but emotionally suspended between her destroyed old life and an uncertain future. Ming Jun left for his office during business hours but always returned by evening, bringing food and asking careful questions about how she was feeling. The anti-anxiety medication kept the worst panic attacks at bay, but it also left her floating, observing her own life from a distance. She slept in the guest room, but began exploring the penthouse during his absences, trying to understand the man who'd decided to destroy her enemies with the same efficiency others might handle business transactions. His book collection revealed complexities that didn't match his corporate facade. First editions of Korean literature alongside translated works by African authors like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and Ngugi wa Thiong'o. She found a worn copy of Things Fall Apart, with notes in the margins, Ming Jun's handwriting analyzing colonialism's psychological impacts with the precision of someone who'd lived through cultural destruction personally. Korea's own history included Japanese colonial occupation, American military presence, and rapid modernization that had transformed the country within a single generation, creating populations caught between tradition and globalization. Ming Jun seemed to have studied how power operated across these fractures. The bathroom cabinet contained expensive skincare products. Korean men's grooming culture was extensive, with multi-step routines normalized across class lines, but also prescription medication for chronic insomnia and what looked like old painkillers. The bedroom she'd glimpsed while looking for extra towels was almost monastic, a single bed, blackout curtains, and no personal photographs. Ming Jun lived like someone who'd forgotten how to have a life beyond survival and power accumulation. But the most disturbing discovery was the file she found in his study, a comprehensive dossier not on Lee Sung but on her. It contained details no employer should know: her mother's birthday, her favorite authors, the small charity in Lagos she donated to monthly despite her own financial struggles, printouts of her university transcripts, even security footage from their office building showing the day she'd cried in the bathroom after the racist client meeting. The footage had been deleted from company servers, but Ming Jun had kept a copy, along with documentation of how that client's business had subsequently collapsed. She was standing in his study holding the file when Ming Jun came home early and found her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Goodness said, "You kept surveillance footage of me crying. You documented my life like I was a research subject. This is beyond creepy. This is obsessive." Ming-jun didn't deny it, didn't make excuses. He set down his briefcase with careful precision and said, "Yes, I've watched you for 3 years because I couldn't stop myself. Every act of kindness you performed in a city that treated kindness as weakness made me more certain that you were the only genuinely good thing I'd encountered." He moved closer but maintained distance, respecting her space even as he confessed invasion of it. "I knew your donation schedule because I had our finance department route additional matching funds to that charity anonymously. I knew your mother's birthday because I ensured you'd never work late that day, so you could call her. I knew you cried after that client meeting because I wanted to kill him for making you doubt your worth. You can't just decide someone is yours to protect without their knowledge," Goodness said, but her voice lacked conviction. Part of her was horrified. A part of her was experiencing something she hadn't felt since before the wedding. Being seen, being valued, mattering enough to someone that they'd spent 3 years learning how to care for her even from distance. "You're right," Ming-jun agreed. "I've violated every boundary that makes someone's attention romantic instead of threatening. But I'm not going to pretend this is normal concern. I'm telling you exactly what I am. Someone who's watched you, wanted you, protected you without permission because men like me don't deserve to approach women like you directly." His expression remained controlled, but his hands were clenched. "I've done things that would horrify you. I've authorized shipments that exist in legal gray zones between legitimate commerce and criminal enterprise. I've ensured loyalty through intimidation and strategic violence. I broker deals between politicians who need deniability and criminals who need legitimacy. Everyone who knows my real position fears me." Goodness looked at the file in her hands, then at Ming-jun, and realized she was standing in the private residence of someone who operated Seoul's underground infrastructure while maintaining a legitimate business empire as cover. The man who'd saved her from suicide wasn't a good Samaritan. He was someone most people would cross streets to avoid. Yet he'd used that terrifying power to systematically destroy everyone who'd hurt her, had brought her to his private sanctuary instead of a safe house, had learned her preferences through years of observation because he believed he had no right to approach her directly. "Show me," Goodness said quietly. "Show me who you really are." Ming-jun's expression shifted, something dangerous and honest replacing the corporate mask. "Are you sure you want to see the monster under the bed?" "The monster under the bed saved my life," Goodness replied. "Maybe I need to know what that means." Ming-jun led Goodness to the rooftop garden she hadn't known existed, a hidden sanctuary accessed through a door in his bedroom that looked like a closet. The space was nothing like the sterile penthouse below. Carefully tended plants in ceramic pots, a small fountain trickling water over smooth stones, wooden benches positioned to catch the sunset, and a view of Seoul that felt less like domination and more like observation. This was where he actually lived, Goodness realized. Everything below was just the shell he showed the world. "I bought this building 15 years ago when I was 25, Ming-jun said, settling onto one of the benches. People assumed it was family money or legitimate business success. It was neither. He gestured for Goodness to sit, and she did, maintaining careful distance that he didn't attempt to close. My father was a mid-level bureaucrat who drank himself to death after the 1997 financial crisis destroyed his pension. My mother cleaned offices in Gangnam buildings, including one owned by a man who ran what Americans call organized crime, but what's really just business conducted outside legal frameworks that favor the already powerful. Korea's 1997 financial crisis had resulted from rapid liberalization of financial markets without adequate regulation, causing massive corporate bankruptcies, widespread unemployment, and a generation of families losing everything overnight. The crisis had reshaped Korean society's relationship with capitalism, creating populations that understood how quickly legal systems could fail to protect ordinary people while preserving wealth for those who knew how to work between legal and illegal spaces. Ming Jun had apparently learned this lesson early. I started running errands for this man when I was 16, delivering packages, carrying messages, things that seemed innocent until I understood what I was carrying. Ming Jun continued, his voice steady but distant, like he was recounting someone else's history. He saw something in me. Maybe the anger, maybe the intelligence I was wasting because university required money we didn't have. He paid for my education at Korea University in exchange for continued service. By the time I graduated with a business degree, I understood how Seoul really operates, the networks between politicians who need funding, businesses that need permits, and organizations that provide both for prices that never appear in official records. Goodness listened as Ming Jun described building his dual empire. The legitimate import-export business that moved goods through proper customs channels, and the shadow consulting firm that advised on shipments requiring discretion, that brokered introductions between parties who couldn't meet publicly, that ensured cooperation through methods ranging from financial incentives to carefully calibrated threats. He'd become what he called a translator between worlds, someone who could speak the language of corporate boardrooms and criminal networks equally fluently, making him invaluable to both. Korean business culture's emphasis on relationships and networks meant that someone who could navigate multiple networks simultaneously held exponential power. And Ming Jun had systematically built bridges across every major network in Seoul. "I've never killed anyone," Ming Jun said, addressing the question Goodness hadn't asked aloud. "But I've authorized actions knowing people might be hurt. I've destroyed businesses to absorb their market share. I've ensured that people who threatened my interests or my clients' interests lost the ability to threaten anyone again. I operate in moral gray zones because the world isn't divided into legal and illegal as neatly as people pretend. Sometimes justice requires working outside systems designed to protect people who already have power." He turned to look at Goodness directly, and she saw exhaustion in his expression that the corporate mask usually hid. "I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what kind of man pulled you off that bridge. I'm not a hero rescuing a damsel. I'm someone who's built an empire on understanding that kindness is weakness in this city, that genuine goodness gets exploited, that the only way to protect anything worth protecting is to be willing to destroy anyone who threatens it." His voice dropped lower. "And then you walked into my office 3 years ago and smiled at me like I was just another person who might need kindness. You brought coffee to security guards everyone else ignored. You stayed late to help people without being asked. You existed like the world could be good if enough people chose goodness." "I don't choose goodness," Goodness interrupted, her voice rough. "I was trying to survive by being useful enough that people wouldn't discard me. Lee Sung proved that strategy doesn't work. Lee Sung proved that some people are garbage," Ming Jun corrected. "But I watched you for 3 years, Goodness. When you helped that intern translate contracts at midnight, you weren't trying to be useful. She couldn't do anything for you. You helped because she was overwhelmed, and you remembered being overwhelmed in a foreign country. When you brought coffee to security guards, you weren't networking. You did it because you saw them as human beings doing difficult work for low pay. That's not survival strategy. That's actual goodness." The fountain trickled, filling silence while Goodness processed. She thought about the file documenting her life, the systematic destruction of everyone who'd hurt her, the 3 years Ming Jun had watched her from professional distance because he believed men like him didn't deserve to corrupt people like her. Korean concepts of propriety emphasized knowing one's place in social hierarchies, not pursuing relationships across class or status boundaries that might disrupt social order. Ming Jun had apparently internalized these boundaries so completely that he'd loved her silently for 3 years rather than risk contaminating her, with his moral compromises. You're asking if I can accept being protected by someone who operates outside the law, Goodness said slowly, working through the implications. If I can see you as more complicated than good or evil, if I can let someone who's done terrible things also be someone who saved my life. I'm asking if you can see me at all, Ming-jun replied. Not as your employer, not as the man who destroyed your enemies, but as someone who's been yours for 3 years, even though he had no right to be. Someone who's tired of operating in gray zones alone. Someone who wants to know if genuine goodness can coexist with necessary darkness, or if those are fundamentally incompatible. Goodness looked at the garden he'd built on this rooftop, the only space where he let himself be human instead of powerful. She thought about the books in his apartment, the notes analyzing colonialism's psychological impacts, the way he'd learned her coffee preferences through years of observation because he believed he couldn't simply ask. She thought about standing on that bridge, convinced no one would care if she disappeared, and the black Mercedes that had stopped impossibly mid-traffic because Ming-jun had been searching for her for 2 days. I don't know if I can love you, Goodness said honestly. I don't know if I can love anyone after what Lee Sung did. But I know that when I was standing on that bridge, you climbed up beside me instead of pulling me down. You didn't try to convince me life was worth living. You offered to show me revenge first and let me choose after. That's the most honest thing anyone's ever done for me. Ming-jun's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Honest enough to keep trying? Honest enough to stay, Goodness replied. 3 weeks after the bridge, Goodness stood in Ming-jun's rooftop garden, watching Seoul's sunset turn the Han River gold. The city looked different from this height. Less like the place that had tried to break her, and more like simply a city, neither cruel nor kind, but full of people making choices that created both outcomes. She'd spent the weeks recovering in the strange safety of Ming-jun's penthouse, taking medication that kept the worst depression at bay while attending therapy sessions with a psychiatrist who asked careful questions about what she wanted her future to look like instead of dwelling on the trauma of her past. The viral video had been systematically scrubbed from Korean platforms through a combination of copyright claims and platform policy enforcement that Ming-jun had somehow orchestrated. It still existed on international sites, but without the Korean social media ecosystem amplifying it. The story had died as quickly as it had erupted. Korean internet culture's rapid news cycles meant that public attention moved on with ruthless speed, and new scandals had already replaced her humiliation in the collective consciousness. Lee Sung's startup had officially filed for bankruptcy. Kimra had returned to America after her visa complications made staying in Korea legally impossible. The groomsmen had scattered to different outcomes. One lost his job. Another had graduate school admission revoked. All of them discovering that the $20 bet had cost them futures they'd taken for granted. Ming-jun had shown Goodness the updates with clinical detachment, not gloating but ensuring she knew that her humiliation had been answered. Revenge doesn't heal trauma, the psychiatrist had cautioned during one session. But witnessing justice, seeing that harm to you has consequences, can help restore a sense that the world operates on principles beyond power exploiting weakness. Goodness wasn't sure if what Ming-jun had orchestrated qualified as justice, but she knew it had given her something essential. Proof that she hadn't deserved what happened, that the cruelty had been about her tormentor's character rather than her worth. Ming-jun emerged from the penthouse carrying 2 cups of tea, moving with the careful precision that she'd learned meant he was giving her space to approach or retreat as she chose. Over 3 weeks, they developed rhythms. Breakfasts where he read financial reports while she worked through books from his library, evenings in the garden where they talked about everything except what they were becoming to each other, nights where they retreated to separate bedrooms because physical intimacy still felt impossibly distant for Goodness. Ming-jun never pushed, never suggested that his rescue entitled him to anything beyond her presence, never treated her healing as something that should move faster to accommodate his desires. I spoke with my company's HR director. Ming Jun said, settling onto the bench beside her. There's a position in our International Development Division, analyzing African market opportunities for expansion. It uses your actual education and skills rather than having you translate documents for people who could use translation software. He handed her the tea prepared exactly how she liked it, a detail that had stopped feeling creepy and started feeling like being known. The salary is triple what you made before. The position reports directly to the division head, not to me, so there's professional distance. You'd have your own office and team. Korean corporate culture's strict hierarchies meant that romantic relationships between different levels of management created complications around favoritism accusations and power dynamics that could damage both parties professionally. Ming Jun was offering her not just a job, but a position that removed the supervisor-subordinate dynamic that had characterized their previous relationship. Goodness understood this was his way of giving her independence within his protection, of ensuring she had professional identity separate from being the woman he'd rescued. I also had my real estate team prepare a property for you, Ming Jun continued, his voice carefully neutral. It's a guest house on the property adjacent to this building. Private entrance, full kitchen, 2 bedrooms. Close enough that I can reach you quickly if you need anything, far enough that you have complete autonomy. Or you can stay in the guest room here if that feels safer. Or you can take the position and find your own apartment entirely separate from me. All of these are acceptable options. Goodness recognized what he was doing, giving her choices where Lee Sung had given her manipulation disguised as love, creating space where her previous life in Seoul had created only claustrophobic dependence on approval from people who'd never valued her. Korean social structures often left foreigners dependent on employers for visa sponsorship, housing assistance, and social networks, creating power imbalances that could be exploited. Ming Jun was systematically removing those dependencies while offering protection that didn't require sacrificing autonomy. Why are you doing all this? Goodness asked, though after 3 weeks of observation, she thought she knew. You could have just destroyed them and sent me back to my apartment. You could have been satisfied with revenge. Because revenge doesn't interest me, Ming Jun replied, setting down his tea to look at her directly. You interest me, not the broken woman on the bridge, the woman who spent 5 years building a life in a country that made that difficult every day. The woman who learned Korean fluently enough to understand cultural nuances, who worked 3 jobs while finishing her degree, who still had energy to be kind to people who couldn't advance her career. That woman deserves the life she was trying to build before Lee Sung treated her dreams as entertainment. He paused, and Goodness saw vulnerability flash across his usually controlled expression. I've spent 15 years building power through fear and strategy. I'm good at destroying things, at protecting interests, at operating in spaces between legal and illegal where most people can't survive. But I've never been good at building something that isn't about power accumulation. I don't know how to have a normal relationship with someone I didn't meet through business calculations. I don't know if I'm capable of the kind of uncomplicated love that doesn't involve surveillance files and systematic destruction of enemies. I don't know if I'm capable of trusting anyone again, Goodness admitted. Lee Sung taught me that intimacy is just elaborate manipulation, that being vulnerable means giving someone ammunition to destroy you. I don't know how to want closeness without expecting betrayal. Ming Jun was quiet for a long moment, then said, then maybe we start with honesty instead of trust. I'm honest that I've wanted you for 3 years in ways that violate professional boundaries, and probably several laws regarding surveillance. I'm honest that I'll destroy anyone who threatens you without hesitation or regret. I'm honest that I don't know how to be good, but I'm willing to learn if you're willing to teach me. He met her eyes steadily. You be honest about what you need to heal, about whether proximity to someone like me helps or hurts, about whether you can imagine a future in Seoul that doesn't involve running away or standing on bridges. Goodness thought about the past 3 weeks, the careful distance Ming-jun maintained, the way he'd learned to ask before touching even casually, how he'd destroyed her enemies with systematic efficiency, but had been almost helpless trying to figure out how to comfort her during panic attacks. She thought about the garden he'd built because he needed somewhere that felt like living instead of surviving, about the books analyzing colonialism's psychological impacts because he'd tried to understand her experience theoretically before ever speaking to her personally. She thought about how the most dangerous man in Seoul became gentle in her presence, not because he was pretending, but because he genuinely didn't know how to be close to someone without destroying them and was terrified of getting it wrong. "I'll take the job," Goodness said slowly. "And the guest house. I need professional identity that isn't about being your rescue project. And I need physical space that's mine even if it's near you." She saw something flicker in Ming-jun's expression, disappointment maybe, or relief that she wasn't leaving entirely. "But I want to keep having dinner together. In the garden, where you're human instead of powerful. I want to keep learning who you are when you're not being the translator between legal and illegal worlds. Is that enough?" Ming-jun asked quietly. "Proximity without promises? Honesty without trust yet? It's enough to start building something," Goodness replied. "Not the fairy tale I thought I was getting with Lee Sung. Not uncomplicated love that ignores who we actually are. But something more honest. Two people who've learned that the world isn't divided into simple good and evil, trying to figure out if damaged people can create something worth protecting." Ming-jun's expression shifted into something Goodness had never seen before. Hope, tentative and fragile in a man who'd built his empire on certainty and control. "Then we start there," he agreed. "With honesty, proximity, and building something neither of us knows how to build." Goodness looked at Seoul's skyline. The city where she'd been humiliated, where she'd nearly died, and where she'd been pulled back from death by someone who proved that protection sometimes came from unexpected, morally complicated sources. Her old life was gone. The naive woman who believed kindness and hard work guaranteed belonging had died on that bridge. But standing in this rooftop garden, with Ming-jun beside her, she realized she didn't want that old life back. She wanted to build something new, not surviving without hope, but learning to hope differently, learning that belonging didn't require becoming small enough for others' approval, but finding someone who valued her precisely because she'd survived becoming vast. "Then we start there," Goodness echoed, and took Ming-jun's hand. If you have enjoyed this story so far, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to ensure you're part of the inner circle for every new release. The screen might go black, but the legend continues. Don't miss the next epic story.